Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spilled. As always, we're your hosts, Kendall
and Delaney,
and we are so excited to be spilling history's hottest gossip with you guys every other Tuesday. You guys, Delaney had a birthday recently. Delaney, I want to know, what was the favorite gift you got? This also is a test.
Wait, actually, dude, okay, that's hilarious because I keep forgetting you gave them to me. These pajamas, Kendall, you don't understand. They're on my bed folded, and they're the one thing I've been looking forward to. Like, I normally put my pajamas away, or like put them in the hamper, put them in the drawer, whatever. I actively leave them sitting on my bed because I get so excited. And like in light of my birthday and of the severe hangover I had to deal with, those pajamas, I lived in them. And it was at the point like I could go down and get my DoorDash and not be embarrassed. And I even got a compliment from a girl who went, oh, are those the Aerie? Like,
yes. Okay, so you guys, Delaney is, she loves the Grinch. She is a live action Grinch girl. Delaney's birthday is the 24th of November, which means like kind of the Christmas stuff was already out when I was shopping for her. And so I went into Aerie and they had a pajama set with Cindy Lou Who. So
and
that
Max.
was part of, and Max. So that was part of her gift. I will say, like, I'm probably a little outside of their like target demographic, but I think Aerie is awesome. And their activewear, whatever it's called, I literally wore the shirt I got to the gym this morning. Like, everything is so soft. Everything's so flattering. So Aerie, if you're listening to this,
girl, hit us up because
sponsor your girls.
I could talk about those damn pajamas and the zip up that you got me, but mainly like I love the zip up, but I cannot live.
The Uniqlo zip up, everyone, actually, it's like a really good investment sweater. It's not that expensive. It's like $40 or $50, but I think to some, it's definitely an investment. It's so functional. It's the zip up. Okay, this is an audio podcast, but you guys, it's from Uniqlo. It's the women's section, and it's a full zip. So it goes all the way up to like a funnel neck, which is very in right now.
What happened to turtlenecks?
So it's a funnel neck now, which I guess is just like a wider turtleneck. But the Olsen twins, the row. You know what? If you guys want fashion content out of me, twist my arm. But I feel like we should probably get started with the episode.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Well, Delaney, what are we talking about today?
Kendall, today we're going to be telling you guys the story that, I mean, in classic spilled fashion, you probably did not learn in school. The story of the native Osage Nation. Now, these people went from being pushed into what the U.S. called, quote unquote, worthless land into becoming the richest people per capita in America.
Ooh la la.
No, seriously, Kay, I'm talking chauffeurs, Paris couture, mansions, private cooks, like the whole shebang. And obviously, you can imagine when indigenous people become wealthier than the Rockefellers, white America went absolutely fucking wild. And the end result of this was like luxury, power, brilliance, and then one of the most calculated murder conspiracies, and in turn, the FBI's first ever homicide case in history.
I'm convinced that like every single episode we do needs to be an HBO special because this sounds so dramatic. Like, someone from Hollywood needs to be listening in on these because genuinely the scripts write themselves. Actually, Delaney and the research team write the scripts, but like,
I hate to break it to you, Kendall. They did make a movie on this.
Damn.
I was gonna say.
There's no unique experience.
No. And actually, in fact, I've been really happy when I brought this topic up to some of my friends. Literally only one friend, Acadia, if you're out there, I feel like she is due a shout out at this point because she's the only person.
Shout out.
Yeah, she's due a shout out, one of our best followers. And honestly, she is probably one of the only people I know that would have actually seen this movie and was like, wait, that movie, like I know it. And it's so niche, it's so her. But yes, there is a movie out there. The movie's called The Killers of the Flower Moon, if you guys want to go watch it. Now, I have not seen it myself, so can't tell you how accurate it's going to be. But nonetheless, I think we will do it better.
Well, you guys know how we start these things. Delaney, will you give us a little bit of context to really set the scene? Set the Hollywood stage?
We kind of have a broad context today. I feel like some of our episodes are also like that. In our origins of today's episode, it's going to be in pre-colonial North America. So like massive indigenous trade networks, mound building cultures, early United States expansion. And eventually we drive into the Indian Removal Act, Civil War, American Civil War. And in the main bulk of our episode today, where shit gets messy, we have our early oil boom in the U.S., World War I, and the roaring 20s. Oh, cue the jazz. I can just hear it.
A little party
Mom.
never killed nobody.
You did not just start. That is not jazz. My brain was going
That is from the great... That's exactly how that song starts. Have you seen The Great Gatsby?
Yeah, yes, of course. Yes. I know what I know, but
that's the song from it. Oh,
yeah.
We got, oh, we got, oh, we got. Oh, we
okay.
got.
I was thinking more accurate
God
to the time period.
Dun, dun, dun,
you know?
dun. Well, I'm just...
You know what? Honestly, I was about to start going into, like, speaking of a show that I want to watch, Pen 15, the Scabba got that do gotti gotti gotta do. I was like, I got that now.
Once again, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, moving on.
How do you know it?
No clue. We have such different algorithms. Anywho, who are the Osage people?
So the people of the Osage Nation, they're an indigenous tribe, and their history, as you can imagine, is deep and extensive, and it goes way back to the 1200s and even before that. And as much if you, right? And if you guys know me at all, you know that I would love to yap about the true history of cultures and people in general. For the sake of time for today's episode, I'm just going to brush over some of the main things that we need to know that go into this episode. So their origin stems from the Ohio River Valley, and they end up kind of migrating as a tribe and as what becomes that nation together through the St. Louis and Cahokia region.
Pronunciation disclaimer, Delaney's going to try her best this episode.
I try my best every episode, dude. I can't.
Yep, and just if you're new here, she's going to try her best again. And
It's
if you're really new
sad.
here, she's not that great at pronunciations, but she tries really hard. So everyone say, good job, Delaney. And then you try it, all right? Because shit's hard.
It's a big insecurity of mine now. Like, I'll be like giving a presentation and I'm so hesitant because even words in English, even words I pronounce all the time and thinking that I pronounce them correctly, and I'm so beyond off. Like, guys, I promise I read a lot. I've taken like all of the English courses.
Well, reading does not help with pronunciation.
Yeah, see, I think that's my issue. I read too much, but no, I talk a lot.
Okay,
Yeah.
babe. All right, let's move on.
Anyway.
Right. I just read too much. My biggest weakness is I read too much.
And I just don't talk ever. Shit.
Let's not lie now.
Why is a tear falling out of my eye? Woo! All right.
The trauma's unlocked. All right.
Seriously. Now, the Hopewell interaction sphere, which, again, we'll go into in another episode if need be, provided extensive trade networks from the Gulf through Yellowstone through the Delaware Bay. So they were an indigenous nation that were very active in the trade networks. They had corn and squash adopted pretty early within these trade networks, and these ceremonial mound building networks as well.
I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here. I'm just going out on a limb because I feel like you guys are probably thinking the same thing as me. They did not teach us in school about Native American trade networks. I literally, like, no, maybe like with the furs and stuff and then like the white people, but we'll get to this, I'm sure. But like they really made the Native American existence seem so much more rudimentary and like,
yeah, it's like kind of barbaric.
That's the word I was looking for.
And it's funny because we see that trend, as you can imagine, a lot throughout history, American and European mainly. Anyway, by 1750, the political strength in the Osage Nation grew significantly across Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, and Oklahoma. So we really see a growth and a spread of their influence. And this is kind of when they began to show up on the map of the white man, to be honest with you. Then in 1821, 5,000 Osage were forced out of Missouri. There's various reasons as to why. And we kind of see this again happen in 1831. Cherokee arrival triggers more conflict. And then the Osage are forced into Kansas. So we really see them having to be moved around a lot as a nation and as a tribe. And that's a lot of instability. And that's really difficult, and especially when this wasn't on their merit, you know?
And they were not the only tribe that this was happening to in this time, right?
No, not at all. And I mean, the Cherokee tribe was moved into Missouri for a reason, and then there was conflict, and so then they are forced into Kansas. And in 1871, they were moved again. So that land in Kansas was sold at $1.25 per acre.
Wow.
And so within some of the really harsh environmental changes that we actually saw in the 1870s, there was a population collapse within the Osage Nation. So about 95% of their population was lost to starvation and to disease.
95%.
Yeah. And the highest numbers were in infants and mothers.
Of course.
Yeah. And a lot of this, again, there are various reasons, but they weren't able to, let's say, prosper, I would say, to the best of their abilities and really keep themselves safe because of this consistent movement. They weren't able to properly settle and therefore get the proper resources needed to survive really harsh environmental crises and turmoil.
I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, and it was talking about your gut microbiome. And for those who don't know, a big part of your immune system is in your gut. Like, your gut is like 90% of your immune system. Your gut is fed by what you eat. And so if you have a very diverse diet, which they did, I'm sure, builds your autoimmunity for that condition. And so this podcast was actually talking about how by relocating these indigenous tribes to other lands, they basically were like disrupting their autoimmunity to their surroundings, which I thought was so crazy. And then the reason the podcast brought it up was because it was then saying, like, as humans, like, the more we disrupt our own environments and it weakens our immunity and all that stuff. But it's fascinating to think about it at like a biologic level.
Wait, super interesting point, Kay. So in the early 1870s, the Osage Nation end up buying land in Indian Territory in Oklahoma. And this is kind of part of the kicker of the story, because this land they were able to actually buy. Okay, so most other tribes held land in trust in agreement with the government somewhat. But the U.S. government actually allowed them to buy this land and own this land because they, and I quote, deemed it as worthless, rocky, unfarmable, and undesirable.
Was it good to have land via trust, or did the government end up screwing them over?
Screwing them over, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of
I feel like we've
time.
kind of
there were no benefits.
seen that one.
Yeah. Especially if we're talking in Indigenous history and Native history, there was no pro to really having to share or agree and or really work with the U.S. government, because I think we know that they...
Yeah, kind of blanket statement, not great. But it sounds like it's going to be really important that they owned this land.
Yeah, it's a big factor in this. And honestly, that single detail changes literally everything once they strike oil.
Spoiler!
So in 1872, the Osage Reservation is formally established. And in 1906, if we fast forward quite a bit, the Osage Act actually creates the mineral and the head rights system. Okay, what this means is essentially surface land was allotted to individuals. So they could actually kind of like own plots of land within the reservation. And mineral estate, so oil and gas, was held for the Osage Nation collectively. So that's kind of the mineral / head rights system for you guys. And within this Osage Act in 1906, the U.S. government, they've entered. They act as the trustee for this, meaning that they were acting as the legal guardian somewhat. So they approved of this act, and honestly, they're like, bitch, I don't care. Like, do what you want. Worthless land. Fine, go for it. Like, divide it up however you want. Do some parts collectively. Fine by me.
Also, just kind of interesting in the first place that they were like, so it's actually our land, but we're going to like sell it to you. And it's like, what? Wait, hold on. Reverse the tapes. Like, this is your land? You're going to sell it to me? Thank you.
Like, what a slap in the face. Like, part of me wishes that we had more time in our episodes so I could have really gone into the history of the origins of the Osage Nation and how long they were on this land. Baffles me, and I think it baffles everybody when you look at timelines to be like, hold on, they were here for so long. Like I said, guys, like I'm talking
1200
or even earlier than that. We even have records of even earlier than that. So while the U.S., while North America is not even a blip in people's minds, not even a blip in most of the Europeans' minds, suddenly they show up, they colonize, they become Americans, and they take the land. Classic story for you. Your oil. Now, if you guys have heard the term headright system or headright before, essentially this term kind of comes about during colonialism. This was almost an incentive to get the colonists to, or pre-colonists, to become colonists, right? To move to the Americas and settle on the land. This was scary. Okay, if you think about getting on a ship to a what was at one point a mythical, magical land that they had heard is inhabited by what they were told were barbaric people, that is kind of scary. And especially if you're thinking of moving your wife and your children there, which is what they needed to happen so they could grow families. Anyway, it's a scary thing. They needed an incentive, and that's where the headright system comes into play, which basically it's head, right? It's you get land per head, and they would get kind of a small sum of money occasionally with this as well. Now, so for the Osage Nation, the mineral and headright system under the Osage Act operated somewhat similarly kind of than the colonial way. However, what it meant is that surface land was allotted to individuals. So essentially, certain individuals and families had rights to plots of land and to the land. However, the mineral estate, so the oil and the gas, was held for the Osage Nation collectively. And this didn't just mean, they get to live on the land, but they don't get any of the resources. They were given a distribution of funds for the resources that were gained within the land, which we'll get to in a minute.
So, Delaney, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you guys are thinking about this in terms of business, right? Which I don't know how many of you guys are thinking about this in terms of business and finance, but if you own part of a company, you via stocks or via equity in a different way, you receive dividends. So part of the profits are split up among shareholders and you get quarterly earnings. That sounds like what's happening here, but the company is basically the Osage Nation, and the spoiler alert, oil funds are being split up amongst the people, anyone who had a headright claim.
That's a good explanation, Kay. I like putting it into kind of a modern terms. Now, this system gives the Osage Nation unprecedented power. However, with power as an indigenous nation, we can imagine that this really set them up for outsiders to become obsessed with gaining these headrights.
So how would you get a headright as an outsider?
Well, essentially to gain a headright, and this is kind of established in the Osage Act, you had to be of Osage Nation. You had to be Osage. And so there are a few ways that this can be gained, but one of the main ones is through marriage, which is another little spoiler to the tea we're about to spill later on. So in 1984, we have the very first discovery of crude oil on Osage land. And 3 years later, our first commercial well is drilled to drill out that oil, the oil. And by the early 1900s, as you can imagine, the U.S. is scrambling to allot native lands. However, The Osage don't have to give up a single surplus because, get this, y'all, if you remember, they bought that land, okay? So the U.S. is like, okay, we're going to give this land to you, we're going to give this land to you, and shit. We can't give this land to anybody. We can't move you around anymore, can we? No. Wrong-o. You bought the damn land when we thought it was worthless.
They done fucked up.
They done fucked up. And this is when the Osage, as the baddies that they were, negotiate a historic deal, okay? The Osage Allotment Act of 1906. And basically, to sum this deal up, they are able to keep all surface mineral rights. And if we do our little thinking, if we put our thinking caps on, Kendall, is oil above the surface or below the surface?
It's below, Delaney.
So that means what?
They got the oil.
They got the oil, boys. They did it. Now, to make even kind of more, let's say, profit off of this, they began these oil leases. And they're auctioned under the, well, what we have noted as the $1 million elm tree in Pawhuska. So under this $1 million elm tree, there's a little catfight, dare I say, between Frank Phillips and Henry Ford.
Henry Ford?
Henry Ford?
Like assembly line Henry Ford? Like Model T Henry Ford?
Model T Henry Ford, yes, sir. He has found himself under a $1 million elm tree in Pawhuska, and him and Frank Phillips get in a literal fist fight. Okay, I'm talking, put him up, buddy. Hurry, put him up, over Osage oil land. Yeah, guys, if you thought that this wasn't desired.
Boys, settle down. It's just oil.
Ladies. Now, the record-winning bid at this auction, and I'm talking 100, 200, $1.99 million sold.
Wow.
$1.99 million for a single 160-acre tract.
All right, you guys, that might not sound like a crazy amount, but adjusted for inflation, in today's dollar, that's over $37 million. And remember, this was like a single allotment. So this is what everyone got. So he was just buying essentially like one person's allotment of this land.
Yeah, 160 acres, which sounds like a lot, but like if you're talking about a reservation, like a huge plot of land, that is nothing. That's nothing. From 1901 to 1930, get this, guys, 319 million barrels are pumped from Osage land. And to our fact checker, Kendall,
I genuinely, Delaney, do you even know what number I'm about to say? I genuinely don't think anyone could guess how much that oil is worth today.
No, how much is 319 million barrels of oil worth?
So, crude oil is trading around $60 a barrel-ish in the U.S. right now. So in today's dollars, that would be almost $19 billion of oil. So Delaney,
I'm
what
sitting
would
here
you
shocked.
do with $19 billion?
I would buy the world.
So for some context of like, why are people going to murder people later in this story? $19 billion.
I would have a house in every place in the world.
So obviously all this money didn't go to like one person. So what happened, Delaney, when they literally struck gold?
Well, in short, as we've already kind of explained, the Osage Nation, they become factually the wealthiest people in the, per capita, in the world. Point blank. Like, not just in the U.S., in the world. For reference, we've already thrown out a bunch of numbers here, the price of all the barrels and how much the acres of land were worth. But between 1907 to 1971, which is a fat chunk of time, okay, over $511 million in mineral royalties were generated.
Damn.
Yeah. By 1929, the average allotted Osage earned the modern equivalent of millions of dollars for their single plot of land.
I know
Insane.
the government's kicking and screaming.
Yeah. Yeah. And so at this point, they are literally like, I'm talking, they have chauffeurs, mansions, private tutors. And I dare the white man at this time to describe an indigenous person to me and have it be so far from the wealthiest person in the world. Like, the world.
I live in New York City, but I might just, like, fuck around and start digging. You never know.
Shit.
Screw the lottery.
Oops.
Baby.
And even like, and out of this, not only do they become multimillionaire, but they also have like their own individual successes. We have the Tall Chief sisters who become world famous ballerinas of their time. John Joseph Matthews becomes a best-selling author, and Carter Revarve becomes the first native Rhodes Scholar.
I mean, so it goes without saying, wealth equals access, which equals privilege, which equals success. This seems like a really great case study of that. Anywho.
Yeah, and so, I mean, and it also just shows they didn't just all take the money and buy chauffeurs and nice cars and mansions and all of that. They also took these, you know, opportunities and ran with them and broke a lot of the stigmas of indigenous and native culture. But people still didn't recognize them, don't talk about them, and I doubt that you even knew that the literal wealthiest people in the whole world at one point were an indigenous nation.
Whenever I think about wealthy Native Americans, I think about like Vegas and like owning a ton of the land out there and the casinos. I've never heard of the Osage Nation and oil.
Now, while we can see it this way, the newspapers of the time could not. And they still, at this time, when they are the wealthiest people in the world, are portraying them as incompetent and unfit. Now, this isn't just, oh, they're incompetent and oh, they're unfit. Their argument was they are so incompetent and they are so unfit to handle the wealth that they have that they need the white man.
Oh my God. It's like
they need the white man to come in and do their finances.
They couldn't get any more creative than that. Like, are you kidding? The same people that negotiated the deal to keep the mineral rights needed like fucking KPMG to come in and like
mind you, the same people who, let's think back to literally the origin of the colonies, the same people who taught them how to do everything.
They were like, yeah, we for sure want you in our books. Like, the hell?
Wait,
right.
Yeah, we actually do need your help because we've always needed your help, right? We've always asked for your help, right? No, like, anyway, so Congress passes the 1921 guardianship law. Even that makes my stomach turn.
It's giving like Britney Spears guardianship.
Yeah.
Are we on the right track?
Yeah, exactly. Lots of money. They think someone's incompetent. They take over. Yeah.
You see, guys, history repeats itself.
But if it's hard to believe the obvious, I have a little snippet of evidence for you guys that dates back to 1823, okay? And this comes to prove that the U.S. government always operated on this logic of elimination, getting rid of these native claims to land from the beginning of time up until the 1900s. But in 1823, in Johnson v. McIntosh, the Supreme Court invokes the doctrine of discovery. And I quote, "Discovery gave an exclusive right to distinguish the Indian title of occupancy. The tribes inhabiting this country were fierce savages whose occupation was war, and whose subsistence was drawn chiefly from the forest. To leave them in possession of their country was to leave that country in wilderness."
What the fuck? Like, genuinely.
Yeah.
Also, the Supreme Court, aren't you guys only supposed to be talking about the Constitution? What are they even
This was the doctrine of discovery. Hear ye, hear ye.
Discovery. Oh my God. Anyway, that's ridiculous. So, okay, that's basically like they've been doing this shit all along. And then we're like kind of all the way into the early 1900s. The oil is abundant.
Yes. And through treaties and laws from around 1806 to 1906, the Osage Territory is reduced to the modern kind of reservation. But the earlier Osage constitutions, 1861, 1881, defined the Osage as residents of Osage Territory, which, indeed, included white settlers and other native nations. So there were some little, loopholes. And so this whole allotment era ends the territorial-based belonging and starts tying the Osage identity to minerals and blood.
Kind of a bit of a Uno reverse moment here. They're like, we are going to take your land because we live here. But then also, like, on your land, if we live on your land too, that's, like, also ours.
Are you ready for this?
Just because we live there.
And I know if you're a U.S. child, you probably learned this growing up. This land is your land.
Your land.
This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands.
Are those the words?
I think so, but I'm like, New York Islands, girl. Who is you? I mean, dude, that song is
New York
fucked.
Island.
To the
From
New York
Redwood
Island.
Forest. To the Gulf Stream waters.
This land is made for you and me.
This was so good with the lag.
But seriously, like, why are we taught that as kids, dude? This land is your land. This land is our land. That is literally like, this land was your land. This land is now our land. From California to the New York Island. Try to take it from me, bitch. You can't. Hoorah. Go America. Like, Jesus Christ. But back to the initial story at hand. I think this is kind of a cool part that just shows the, like, concrete kind of rules that stayed in play throughout the decades from 1906 until 2004 when Shoddy over here was born. The U.S. insisted that to run or to vote in an Osage election, you must possess a head right in the mineral state. So that, like, still stayed true, and it was, like, kind of became a concrete portion of the Osage Nation and of their identity was this whole idea of a head right or a share from or within that mineral state.
So am I getting this straight? Basically, in order to get a head right, you had to be Osage at the time, and then that was passed down generationally. So basically them saying, like, all the way up into very recent times, you had to have lineage back to the, like, original Osage. Not original,
yes.
But you know what I mean. Like, back in the early 1800s, you had to have family members and then have directly descended from them.
Yes. And the kind of tricky part, though, is it's somewhat exclusive because by 2004, only 4,000 of 16,000 Osage descendants had a vote. And many of those only had, like, fractional shares. So there's positives and there's negatives to it. But, you know, it just shows kind of the progression of the system and how all of these things stayed in play up until very modern day, because I'm not old. So we got a little sidetracked here, but remember we were originally kind of starting to talk about the guardianship law, Britney Spears, all that drama. And so again, this was because they were labeled incompetent to manage their own wealth. And once deemed incompetent, an Osage citizen, God, I want to laugh because it's so ironic, but it's not funny. An Osage citizen has a court-appointed guardian to control their finances.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
Also, honestly, give me a court-appointed guardian to manage my finances.
Hey.
But still.
Except for the fact that in their case, the guardians were typically white outsiders. So doctors, lawyers, police officers, and judges. I'm sorry.
I don't
You're
think
a doctor.
I'm gonna
the
say
fuck
it.
do you know
Yeah.
about finances? Right.
I don't.
And obviously, these guardians frequently conspire to gain wealth and exploit the people that they're supposedly protecting. You know, baby, I'll be your guardian.
So in a typical like financial institution, if you are working with like a financial advisor, they have what's called a fiduciary responsibility to act in your interest, not in their interest. Something tells me cops don't have a fiduciary responsibility to the Osage tribe.
No, they're just fiducias.
Hey.
That was good.
Yeah. What about like the doctor's oath situation, the do no harm? We forget about that? That doesn't apply to personal finance? Finance, as some would say.
Rude. Yeah, obviously not, because many recklessly spend or they embezzle the Osage assets, and they obviously, if you're a cop or a judge, you face little to no consequence because you would be the one to catch yourself. David Gran even calls this one of the, and I quote, largest state and federally sanctioned criminal enterprises.
Wow. It is
Messy.
giving Britney Spears.
What it's giving? Toxic.
It was so off key, I didn't even know what you were talking about for a
Okay,
second.
all right, because I couldn't do the whole song. Don't you know that you're toxic? I can't do an impression of Britney. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Ashby, where are you?
So you're probably thinking at this point, okay, guardianship, people are trying to gain these head rights, trying to scam them out of this, but weren't there acts? You know, didn't Congress formally establish it as a reservation in 1872? Didn't the Osage Act reserve the minerals for the tribe? Didn't the Osage Mineral Council, you know, be created to oversee these minerals? Yes, yes, and yes. However, in classic U.S. fashion, this little imbalance of power, or so they called it, meant that the U.S. could still find a way, and I quote, find a way to maintain an active role in the tribal affairs, sometimes for the perceived good, but other times for ill. So they always had a foot in the door. They always had these little loopholes. They're the trustee for the Osage Act. They're picking the elected members for the Mineral Council. Congress was the one to formally establish the reservation. They always had a foot in the door, and they used that to screw them over. And just to kind of further illustrate this reign of terror, here's an article from the New York Times, January 17th, 1926. Seldom in the history of the white man's dubious dealings with the Indian, there has been such a determined combination of craft and violence. White men and women have married members of the wealthy tribe. Others have become beneficiaries of a heavily insured Indians. The devices for transferring oil royalties into the white hands have been infinite. Before oil was discovered, the Osage Nation lived in peace on its meager lands.
Someone get her on Libby.
No, it's going so good. On its meager lands, held on to the treaty with Uncle Sam and unmolested by the white man. But when petroleum began to gush from the Indians' hills, a throng of whites appeared on the scene. And ever since that time, the courts of the little town of Pawhuska have been overwhelmed with lawsuits and criminal cases, while one after another of the heads of these rich Indian families has been the victim of murder.
I'm sorry.
I feel like that was really good.
That murder just really got me. So, if anyone has a audiobook that they need read, hit my girl up.
Hey.
It has to be an undefined accent, but she'll be great. So if I understood what we were getting at here in the article, basically just like very bluntly calling out the fact that like where there was money to be had, the white man figured out how to get it, be it fraud, embezzlement, marriage, just like any which way. And then it tied up with a lot of lawsuits, a lot of friction.
Pretty much, yeah. And you saw that there was a mention of murders. Or murders. Murder! Murder!
We said we weren't going to joke about the murders because it's a sensitive subject, Lainey.
You're right. You're right. I know. I mean, I know I've been saying a lot of quotes today, but this one's quite important. This one comes from Gran to even kind of solidify this. This was a culture of Gran. You know, Gran.
What is that?
No, Gran. Come on, Gran.
Yeah.
David Gran. You know, David Gran. American journalist, staff writer for The New Yorker, an author. He writes a lot about indigenous people, and he wrote Killers of the Flower Moon, the book that eventually became the movie. Yes. Okay, there's the light bulb. Here we go.
There we go. You guys just drop that name at your next dinner party. You'll sound so smart.
You know, Gran. And it's Gran with 2 N's. Like Granny, but drop the Y. Granny Smith Apple, but you drop
the ye apple. Like Granny Panties, but you drop your panties. That was
really good. That was good.
So good.
But on a more serious note, Grant argues that this was a culture of complicity and that it was allowed to go on for so long because so many people were part of the plot. You had lawmen, persecutors, and the reporters who wouldn't even cover these murders or any of the conspiracies. Oilmen who wouldn't speak out, morticians who would cover up the murders when they buried the body, doctors who were giving poison to people. Okay, this was a fully corrupt system from top to bottom. Now, the official FBI murder count of these Osage murders is 24. However, it's worse. A lot of the evidence suggests that hundreds were likely murdered during this reign of terror. I mean, this was a 15-year period. Yeah. And in short, what kind of happened is we have white people, not just men, white people marrying into the Osage name. We have them kind of creating an alliance through marriage, getting that head rights, and then suddenly from within these communities, we have murders happening. And we have Anna Brown, Anna Stratford, George Bighart, attorneys, Henry Roan, Rita Smith, and the names go on and on. Now, when each one dies, someone else inherits the head rights, and suddenly that one dies, and then the other one dies, and it all goes down till it's inherited by a white man, typically, and in a lot of these cases. However, I have to note that a lot of these cases aren't documented, because like we said, everyone was covering it up, meaning there's no justice. Their families didn't get the justice. They don't get the justice that they deserved for being killed. Not only do they not deserve it, but like they didn't get anything, you know, it was hidden. Eventually the FBI gets involved. And if you know any of the history of the FBI, this is right around their creation and their formation. And this actually ends up being the FBI's first ever homicide case.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Bookmark this for your dinner party takeaway.
Right? It was kind of an easy job, though, I won't lie, because by the time they show up, and I quote, everyone pretty much already knew what was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, the Oklahoma Attorney General writes to the Commissioner of the Indian Affairs and says the motive was to provide the inheritance of a considerable number of estates, vesting such inheritance in one person.
Oh, wow. So they weren't even just after one estate. They were like...
No.
Trying to collect them all Pokemon style.
Yes, seriously, yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Now, the conspiracy is always up in the air, whether this was one person or 2 people or 3 people or a band of them. And Indian agent George Wright writes, the popular opinion in Fairfax and Pawhuska is that one person is directly responsible for the various murders, and a rather strong chain of circumstantial evidence has already been woven.
Whoa. People are so creative. Obviously, awful thing to happen. But, like, when I think about ways I could make money, murdering a bunch of people to, like, mesh everyone's inheritance together is just not very far up on the list.
No. William K. Hale ends up being convicted for the murder of Henry Roan So one of them.
Hell no.
Hell no. And sentenced to life in prison, but shocker, he's paroled in 1947. And after his parole, some people in Fairfax even welcome him back. We never even really find out whether he was responsible for all of the murders or if it was a band, a chain of murderers. And we kind of know that it was this whole like deep webbed conspiracy. So we can assume it was probably more than one. But he's the only one convicted. And when he comes out after his parole, Dr. Joe Connor, an Osage citizen who had lost his relatives, to these murders, says, and I quote, "The word went around town. Bill Hale is here." It was a whole big thing. Like, oh, yes, he's here. People welcome him back. And Hale ends up dying in a nursing home in Phoenix, 1962. His only regret, according to a relative, and I quote, "If that damn Ernest had kept his mouth shut, we'd be rich today."
Damn.
Yep.
That's
dickhead
crazy.
till the death.
Damn. So he was like the kind of the forefront, if nothing else, the fall guy for a larger like crime syndicate, basically. He went to jail. He got out. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, you were like so wrongfully in there."
Yeah.
And then basically on his deathbed, he was like, "Fuck it, I would do it all over again." And snitches get stitches and everything.
Pretty much.
Well, you are right, Delaney. This has been a whirlwind. This is a really interesting episode because I feel like it has so many layers to it that just aren't commonly in the conversation when you think about Native Americans and then when you think about Native Americans and the white man / government. The first being their own brilliance, right? And their own success and their own wealth. The second being the more modern ways the government and white people in general inflicted terror on them. It wasn't just like killing them with measles. No, it was like systematically pillaging them in a more modern, more strategic way, which is insane. So I feel like it's interesting twofold of like, A, we're like learning so much more about this nation that just... It's just not what you think of when you think about Native Americans, when you learn about Native Americans in school. But it's also not really what you think of when you think about a tragedy at the hands of the colonists and then the government and everything. Like you kind of, both sides of this story are very underrepresented to everyone's detriment.
Yeah. I think one of the rougher parts of it is the fact that they stayed loyal to a country that failed them also. Like our records show that during World War I, Osage men accepted the draft and volunteered at the highest percentage of any ethnic group of U.S. citizens. And that pattern repeated in World War II.
That honestly like broke my heart a little bit.
Yeah. So like to the country that from the very beginning, screwed them over, came in, took their land, took their resources, gave it back. We're like, okay, here, take this shitty land, regretted it, came back in, infiltrated the calculated systems, and then murdered them. Like, all for what? And then they end up still being loyal to the country. And I don't say that at fault to them at all. I actually say that with only respect.
Well, I would say loyal, maybe also in need. A lot of people sign up for the draft because they know they'll be provided food and structure.
Especially World War I. Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe loyalty, but there's a chance the country screwed them over so bad they had to enlist just to make sure that they knew that they were going to get food and a pension and like all the stuff. I don't know. Yeah. But just putting it out there on the table.
100%. That's a really, really good point.
We hope that we really were able to enlighten everyone. Still kind of joke about it. We really wanted to pick an episode that didn't just further reiterate the typical history of Native American and white violence, because we wanted to, on one hand, really lift up like their own unique story and then also draw attention to like different types of tragedy. So this was actually supposed to be our Thanksgiving episode, but we kind of fucked up the calendars. That's fine. But we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. We hope you learned something new. I'm just going to ask myself, because I'm on a roll already, my dinner party takeaway. Thank you all for asking. I think the specific point about that they were literally the richest people in the world at one point, richer than the Rockefellers, that to me, I will for sure be bringing up at dinner parties.
That's a good K. I think the broader narrative always focuses on the Reign of Terror and the violence, and they overshadow the Osage achievements. So that's part of what we wanted to do today, and we hope that you guys enjoyed.
As always, if you're on a streaming platform where you can comment, I want to hear your dinner party takeaways. Check out the TikToks for extra footage, for behind the scenes, for all the little clips. Delaney and I definitely have some good bloopers from this episode, so they'll be there. We're so excited that you spent a little over an hour with us, or under. I don't know, I'm just guessing. I haven't edited it yet, but thank you guys for your time. We will see you in 2 Tuesdays, and stay hot.
Stay hot,
stay educated.
Honey. And stay warm. Bye.
And Spilled would be truly nothing without our awesome team, Rachel Stout, Jacob Rigner, and Soraya Fofana.